Go for it.
Okay, so I think that like one of the biggest takeaways for me from the readings this week and just from like my personal experience at Geo Bridgeport was that you have to have concrete and observable instructions. So I've noticed that a lot of the times, like if I just like to tell a kid like do your work, they don't always know what that's supposed to look like. And that's something that Doug Lemov talked about in his interview, is breaking it down into individual steps and like being able to model it for the students. But at the same time, I feel like that takes so long to be like, sit down, get out a pencil, take out your packet. And like by the time you're in middle school, maybe you should already know that that's expected. So I guess like my question from that was, when is it okay to stop like breaking it down so far, and like when can you assume that your students just like know the expectation?
I think one thing I noticed in the class that I'm TAing in is that the teacher, like from the very first day, made very clear instructions about what like the norms were for the class. So it was like, this is what we're gonna do. You guys are gonna come in, and as soon as I sat down, she was like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna come in. I'm gonna say class is starting in 3, 2, 1, and then by the time she gets to 1, they know that they have to be at their desks with a writing utensil and their do now that she hands out at the door. So she like explained that the first day very explicitly, and then the first couple of days after that was the expectation, but she would like clarify a little bit if they forgot maybe, and then like after the first couple of days it was just expected that they knew that, which I kind of liked that because it didn't leave any wiggle room for, like, she didn't cater to, like, questions that were like, well, I didn't know. Like, everyone was just expected to know, and then they knew. So I appreciated that strategy.
Yeah, I'm having the opposite because my teacher didn't set those expectations. So we're still struggling now with students coming in because she doesn't want to do the process of, this is what we're doing now, what is expected. She feels like there are things people just need to know already. And so it's causing a lot of issues because students really, I think a lot of them don't realize that unless it's told that they have to do it. So we're seeing a lot of almost chaos in the beginning of classes. I did catch her though today doing a little bit more like narration, and it helped the class go a lot better. So I think it's definitely something that needs to happen. But once that expectation is set, I think just by watching students, you'll see when it becomes more of a habit.
Yeah. At our school, like, we have like just the general school expectations. So when for our first days, we're very lenient, like with the merits and the demerits, and we just would kind of be like, hey, like, we're silent in the hallway, tomorrow that would be a demerit. And like in the classroom, we'd be like, we use silent hands, we don't call out, tomorrow that would be a demerit. Like, hey. And so then after these few weeks, like, we'll be like, that's a demerit. And sometimes like we'll be like, no talking, and if we have to redirect them, then we give them a demerit like in the classroom. But after a while, you kind of just don't even warn them. You kind of just go, that's one, and they know. Because they already know the expectations because it's listed in every classroom. They know that you have to have your shirt tucked in. They know that you can't run in the hallway. They know that whenever we transition, they have to be silent. So with the classroom management, like, we kind of set it up for the first, like, using them in, kind of being like, this is what the expectations are. Like, we can't just like expect you to know them. But after a few days, like, and we give you the warnings, like, we know that you already know these. Like, you can't forget because, one, they're all over the hallways. Like, we have a reminder, but it's also like, that you have to be dressed appropriately. You have to have a belt. Your shoes have to be like a certain way. Like, so we just kind of set it up. We ease them in, but we also just were like, after we ease you in, like, it's expected that you know it.
Yeah, and now we're in the same square. So even going back to PD, they really talked about consistency, and not only consistency as your individual self, but consistency as a team. And we really didn't understand until we got into our classrooms how much consistency mattered, and it does. And they are expecting across all tutors and all TAs and all teachers to enforce the same merit and demerit rules, as well as the same expectations. And it's layered too. So you have the non-negotiables for the whole entire school, and then also for the classroom itself, and then smaller for tutorial. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
So this year they switched from demerit and merit to grows and glows. And I think it's really confusing the kids because they no longer think a grow is as bad as a demerit. So it's not as much of a tool any longer because it's like, okay, give me a grow. So I feel like if there had been more consistency during the transition of the year, that would be an issue.
I've also been finding that a lot of the time, just like the threat of a grow, which is like the equivalent of a demerit, is much more effective than actually giving it. Because some of the students get so dejected, they're like, oh, I already got one grow. Like this day is a total wash. Like why would I even try? But the threat of being like, if I have to tell you again, then it's a grow, I think has been working better for me at least.
I like the idea, like I could see where the trouble would be with them maybe not taking it as seriously, but I really like the idea of a grow versus a demerit or a deduction. I think it kind of goes a little bit with the Les Stein article that was talking about the leadership, because I feel like that's like pushing the kids to be better. It's not saying like you were bad today. It's saying like this is something we could work on, and it's like framing it in a positive way. So I could see how that maybe wouldn't be quite as threatening, and they're kind of like, okay, like give it to me, whatever, I don't care. But I still like the ideology behind it better. So that's kind of cool. You guys have incorporated that. I like that.
It's also like I have one student who is, sorry, I'm like being blinded by the sun. I have one student who, once she gets one morning detention, like her day is terrible. Like, and so the past couple of days, because she had one morning detention one day, she's accumulated more and more and more. And I'm like, but you're a good kid and you could do better. But like, because your day is starting off like that, you're starting off in the culture office and not doing what you need to be doing. So she's like struggling really hard right now. And she's already repeating sixth grade because of behavior issues last year. So like she's on the same path to like do the same again. And I'm like, but you could be so much better. It's just that morning detention is not the best way to manage that, I think.
Yeah.
So it's starting the days off rough.
So what do you think would be like a good alternative to like detention? Like, is there like a way that you
Honestly,
could?
I think they should have stuck with lunch detention. I wasn't here last year when they had lunch detention, but lunch is usually when a lot of kids rack up a lot of demerit points. So nodding. But yeah, it's when a lot of kids get in trouble because it's like the only time that they're really allowed to talk. And so they like take that freedom and run with it and go like absolutely crazy. And so I think if instead they were given like a lunch detention where they're like just sitting silently and eating lunch, that would be a lot better than like the morning detention where it's like immediately you come in, you sit down, you're in trouble.
And I might sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm a big fan of picking your battles. And I think that especially if you know the kid and you know what they've been going through, because we have the ability for Kickboard to look up their merits and demerits, and you know that they're improving, because it's really hard to be super militant because you're middle school, you want to talk, and the only time you do get to talk here is at lunch. And so it's like, okay. You understand why they would want to get a little wild and crazy, and you still have, 4 periods left, or 3 periods left. So I'm a big fan of looking at the whole situation before we make decisions like that in the classroom and outside of the classroom as well.
One of the things that I actually talked to for the assignment this year on Saturday through like interviews, is I talked to the math teacher at Great Oaks Wilmington, Mr. Kent, about like whether or not he feels he like leads his students or manages them. And he was like, "Oh, I don't like the word classroom management. I like to say that I lead my students because like he does like a gradual release model, which is like how most math classes are set up, but he like teaches them, then he lets them do it with him, and then he like lets them lead, and then they do it, like he assists a little bit, and then he like evaluates them on what they do independently, which I think is a good way to like go about managing a classroom, because it's showing that like they have the ability to do it on their own. You just need to like teach them the first couple steps, and then like from there they can be the leaders that they need to be and like take care of their own education and make it their own, and not have it all be like, oh, the teacher doesn't care about me, so I'm not going to learn. It's like, oh, the teacher wants me to learn. The teacher wants to like give me this information and impart on me all of this knowledge so that I can flourish.
Yeah. One of the teachers I interviewed today for the same assignment, he said that like he thinks about like leadership more in terms of the curriculum than in terms of actual behavior. He was like, management is for behavior, leadership is for like getting the kids invested in their own learning, which I thought was really different than the article we read about like the Les Stein piece. It was kind of a different philosophy. But it's also like something I've been kind of struggling with, because what we're doing in geography right now, which is 7th grade humanities in Bridgeport, is like latitude and longitude. So I'm trying to like make connections to the real world and be like, students, this is so important. But it's kind of hard to like come up with a real reason for like why latitude and longitude is like critically important to their lives. Yeah. He talked about like just like highlighting the importance of like learning being like the exploration process that the student is going on, that you're leading them on. It shouldn't be you like pushing them through.
Oh yeah, like that's how I do it. Like, so when in my tutorials, like we did social studies today, and we were talking about different types of maps, and there's like no way to jazz up how unexciting maps are. Like, there's no way you can make that sound like an interesting topic for kids. And so I just like kept having to like, they were like, and also getting confused where like Southeast was and Northeast and like what the regions were, and so I was just like, I brought them up to the board, and I was like, I put the map up there like on like the board and stuff. And I was just like, just draw like over it, and like, you know, and I think just like having them kind of go through it themselves and kind of just figure out like what it is, like instead of me being like, this is what this map does, this is what this other map does, I would be like, what do you notice here? Like, what do you think about it? Oh, you think this, why? And like kind of just like leading them along the way, like kind of gently being like taking them, like it's like herding them kind of like around where they need to go. And then like, but you don't ever kind of force them into a different thing. You just like let them go their own way, but you kind of just provide that support.
Yeah, you start the conversation too. Yeah. And I think just making it relevant, like, why do we need maps? Well, what if you didn't have your phone and your GPS and all of these different things? Yeah. But I've noticed with them, when you start the conversation, they end up taking their own lead, and they begin to feel kind of empowered, and that they're, you know, really independent within doing it. They love to, well, my tutorial group loves to talk among themselves and have the right answer and be involved, just as long as you make it relevant for them and still connected to the material they're supposed to be learning.
Have you guys found that most of your students are, to use the EMAT terms, like intrinsically motivated, like want to learn just for the sake of learning, or do most of your kids still just like are motivated by like, I need a good grade, or I need to not fail out of school? Like, have you guys found that dichotomy playing out at all in your students?
It's like a combination of both. Like a lot of my students, like they want the good grades, so like that's what they're doing. But a lot of my kids are like there, and they're like kind of detached from like what we're doing. But like if I'm there, I'm like, so this is what we're doing today, like, and I start talking to them about what it is, like they're just genuinely interested in what we're talking about. Like the maps, they weren't interested, but like when we talked about the different kinds of maps, then they were just curious because they didn't know what kind of maps they were. So it's like a combination of both in like that scenario.
See, I'm finding it where my kids don't really want to learn. Mm-hmm. They really see school as just a bother and somewhere they don't need to be. So it's been very interesting trying to get them involved and excited, because we even did a very relevant tutorial about Pokemon Go. Mm-hmm. And even though almost every student in my tutorial group said they played Pokemon Go, they were not very interested in learning about it. And I thought it was very interesting. It was an article on Iran and banning Pokemon Go. Mm-hmm. And so, but yeah, so I'm finding that they're not very motivated to learn in a classroom. So that's the difference. They want to learn outside a classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think for me, my discovery this week when I was having some behavioral issues in my tutorial, and I had to issue a demerit, which was hard for me because even though it's been only 2 weeks, they're like my babies now, and I get to know them individually. And this particular student, she has a really sweet voice, and she speaks really low, and so I think she gets away with not being able to read, and I have her for ELA. And what I've noticed is I have 2 students who are like way up here, and then she's here and they're on opposite ends. And I think that she has no self-efficacy. And I try to build her like self-esteem, and but she knows she's in 6th grade. She knows that she's not as high of a level as the other 2 students. And those 2 students are getting like kind of impatient with her. I think that she wants to learn. For example, she didn't raise her hand today in tutorial, and someone did. She raised her second, and I said, let her go. And the other one, and she got so mad. And then I found out later that she knew all the words in that paragraph. She was like, well, I knew all the words in this paragraph, and that's why I wanted to do it. And I think it really frustrates her. And I think that she really wants to learn, but she recognizes, I don't want to say inferior, she recognizes where she needs to improve.
That's very interesting because at Bridgeport, we do our tutorial groups in very homogenous groups, so they have to be within 1 or 2 levels of each other.
Oh.
So like I have level W of FNP testing for ELA, but I just test my students and they're all about a Z. One is an X, but they're gonna like stay together so that we can focus on the same, but they're at the same level of learning.
We do the same thing at NYC. We don't use FNP scores, we use Lexile, but all the kids in the group are like within maybe 100-point difference, but usually closer to like 20, 40, 60-point difference from each other. So that's why we're able to do guided reading with them, because we can use the same book for each group. So I have noticed that like in my classroom that I'm teaching in, though, the students who know that they're good at it, like they raise their hands, they know what's going on, and the students who know that they're just not getting it as much as their peers, and they're definitely like discouraged from raising their hands. Like I think they're either embarrassed or they just like lose motivation. But I've definitely noticed it in that setting, like you were saying.
Something that I remember one of the like new teacher survival guide videos talked about was using competitions and games. And that's something that the teacher I'm paired with for social studies, I think, does a lot. And that does help the kids who are like less intrinsically motivated to participate in class. The way he does it is he like splits the class in half, and then we'll like take volunteers from both sides to like write the answer on the board or like label something on the map, and they get points for correct answers. And I think that's like where I've seen like the most class participation so far.
One of the things that I found, I have a student who is very motivated by the fact that she wants to get out of 6th grade because she's repeating 6th grade. And so she just like, her goal is to get out of 6th grade and then get out of 7th grade and then get out of 8th grade and just like finish school. And like at this point, I'm okay with that as a goal because like it's motivating her to try to be better behavior-wise, emphasis on the word try. But she is struggling with, like, she's in a reading group with, for my ELA tutorial, 2 girls are level Z, and she's like a level like R. So the other girls are like flying through the packets that I'm doing, and she's struggling to like write 2 sentences down, and like every sentence is either like, it has like ugh or I don't know, grr, like in all of her things that she writes, which is like frustrating to read because like she knows I read packets, but it's difficult to like try to get her to see school and learning as like a necessity in life instead of just like I need to get out of 6th grade. But as of right now, I'm good with that goal because it's helping her with her behavior a little bit. Just a little bit. She also needs to get out of more detention to help with that behavior, but I can't do anything about that.
I don't know. I think the way ours is set up with the different levels, I think it's kind of just set so that the ones that are higher on the level can kind of push the kids that are lower, which sometimes happens. Other times they fly through it, which in our case, like I end up modifying it for each student. So like if I know my one student has trouble writing because like he just like can't like write for too long, it'll just like he can't do it, then I like give him like the like little laptop, or if he just can't spell and it frustrates him, then I have him draw it out and then he'll like give that to me. And then like he explains it well, but he just can't write it. So we just end up like modifying it for our students, but sometimes it is difficult. But like in my math tutorial with my lovely 7th graders, they're both like on a level 4, like 1 to 4. Like, so they're way past, they know a lot of stuff, but like they were having trouble understanding like one of the fractions, like one of them was, and the other girl got it. And like before I could even explain it to her, the one girl that got it was just like, oh, like, can I just explain to you the rule? And then like just showed her it. And I was like, this is you teaching someone else. Like, it's not even me. Like, I think, the way it's set up for us, like in the management of the tutorials, is that you kind of just have kids of different levels so that they can kind of push each other, because the kids that already know are using their knowledge and building on that by like helping someone else. So like that management kind of works for us, although it is a little time consuming kind of having to modify it and like see that our kids are like kind of bored because they're already done with the packet, and then the one kid who has trouble reading isn't. So
but I like think it's sad that my one student knows that she's like at a lower level than her peers, and at the same time she doesn't see them as peers because she's like, I'm 14, almost 15 in 6th grade, and these girls are 11. And so she like gets really frustrated when they're working on the packet. So I definitely need to modify hers more. But at the same time, I like don't want to, because she should be doing this curriculum and it should be the level that she's at, but she's not there yet. So I'm like struggling to see where that line is between like making it too easy and making it like appropriate.
One thing I thought was interesting with like the Stein article was when she was talking about how to be a good leader as a teacher. You have to be open to sharing ideas with faculty and getting feedback. Great Oak Bridgeport does a lot of that, which is really cool. They do a lot of observations, check-ins. I know in the classroom I'm TAing for, they do a lot of different positions. So we have our curriculum person comes in and observes, and then our like principal will come in and observe, other teachers will come in and observe, and we'll all provide you with feedback. So that it'll tell you, oh, I thought this didn't work in this situation. I found this situation and this worked instead. So I'm excited to get that in my tutorial too, so that I can start seeing what to do a little better.
Yeah, that's really similar to something that like Lamov talked about in his NPR interview, which was a culture of teamwork, where teachers build each other up. And I feel like that just addresses like so many issues in education. Like I was reading this article recently about teacher burnout, and I feel like having that culture of like we all have each other's backs and can like share information makes it so much less stressful. You don't feel so much like you're on your own. I know like being able to talk to some of the teachers who have been with the kids that I have for many years has been really helpful. So I feel like I'm not going into issues with them like totally unaware of what they respond to and what they don't. Like I already know kind of what to do.
I think that's one of the really good things about the tutor core system, is that it's kind of like that built-in network of support, because I can go to like any of my peers who are like similar age, similar situation, like somewhat similar mindset, and like be like, hey, what's working in your tutorial? Or like, hey, I know you have this kid for math, I have him for ELA. Like, what kind of strategies have you been working on with him? What's worked? What motivates him? And I think that's like really, really important. And I'm really glad that I'm doing this year before jumping into teaching, is I think that hopefully I'll be able to like hold on to that mentality, like in a teaching setting, and treat my other teachers like I'm treating my other tutors like as a resource and like a support system. I'm sure you guys are all nodding, so I guess you guys all probably feel the same way.
Yeah. Our tutor room is like our sanctuary, and like because we all even if we don't have like the same like tutees, like we all kind of know the general kids. So whenever we have like a thing, like we're like, do you know about so and so? And then everyone's like, yes, like we need to like help them, or we need to come up with a better thing. And then like also like when we ever have to annotate, we always are like, if someone has like a copy of it, they're like, I'm gonna make copies for everyone, or like we rely on each other a lot. And we're also just like a really good support system, just because like the days get really long. So usually we come in here, we've all either almost had a breakdown in here or have had one, and like we're all supportive of each other. So it's like a really good support system, and like we keep each other in check, and we like run over like our plans or just ask any questions. So
and then you all too, and then me, Barbara, and Val, like we're together for the EMAT, so we can say EMAT stuff, and we're like but I love when we all get to come together, and it's really similar because we're doing the same work.
It's also just a good place that people watch. Like people come in and they're like, we're gonna talk about this, and they're like freaking out, and you're like, all right, like we're gonna calm it down, like the door is closed and that no children can hear you, and we'll get through this. But like it's a great place to just like sit back and watch people come in, because some people come in and they're like, I just have the best tutorial ever, and other people like freak out, and like other people come in like in tears, and so like it's a good place to be, and also just like have that sanctuary there. But yeah, it's good people watching place.
Tutor Cohort here is very close. We do a lot of events and stuff with each other, and most of us all live in the same apartment building. So we'll do a lot of hanging out. But it's been definitely really cool to know who's in the same grade level as you, so you can be like, hey, I'm having a problem with this person. I know she's in your advisory. Can you give me any insight?
Yeah, I think especially and to use those people as like a classroom management tool has been really useful for me. So actually today, I've had this tutorial, this one group of boys who are all friends, and they just love to talk to each other and not pay attention to your tutorial. Which, has been a little challenging because they're not, bad kids by any means. They're just hard to get them to focus. And today I asked one of my tutors in my group who's on support that period to come, and I was like, hey, can you just come? Like, I don't need help with the actual lesson. I just I think it would really help them to have another adult there to be like, hey, focus. And she came and she sat with my group today, and she totally backed me up on everything. She wasn't talking over me as far as the tutorial goes, but I'd be talking with one student, and the other boys would be talking to each other, and she'd be like, hey, you guys really need to focus right now. Miss Hudak's giving instructions, and they're really important. And it was so helpful to have her there doing that for me and with me. So I think as a management tool, being able to use your peers and being able to use people who are observing or something of that nature really helps out a lot.
Absolutely, especially the mentor teachers that we have, just watching them teach in the moments that we do get to watch them teach and not just take kids to the bathroom. It's nice to just sit back and be well, not sit back totally, because you have to make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, but you take a moment and just watch them talk, and how they interact with the kids is really powerful to just I could read a textbook all day that tells me how to be the best classroom manager, but until you actually see that in practice, it doesn't really become real until you watch it.
I like watching my teacher do all the nonverbal signals. That's something he's really good at. So I've been trying to copy in class, and the first time that I looked at a student from across the room, and I was just sit. And he did. I was oh,
I have the worst.
Yeah. And that's just a helpful, I think, skill to have in general, because then he doesn't have to interrupt class, and his lesson is frequently to discipline people, because he can just look at a kid and do something with his hands or with his body, and they know what he wants.
In one of the videos, they were talking about that and the teacher stare and the power of the teacher stare, and I thought it was so relevant. So I was yes, I've definitely gotten that down, and it's saved me in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I know in the classroom that I'm in, there's actually on the walls, there's all these printouts of the hand signals for the class, which I thought was really cool because they're not necessarily school-wide, which, you know, that's something else it could be. But at least for the class, when you walk in and you look on the board, like you can see there's like a picture of a hand and it's like this. And this means I need to go to the bathroom. And like there's a picture of a hand doing this. And it means underneath it'll say, this means I have a question. So like even like providing those cues for them without even having to like, because then you don't have to take the time to like teach them these elaborate hand signal system. It's just like they are very clear. And from the first day the kids were doing it, they were holding up their hands like this. And like the teacher didn't even have to say, this is what this means. It was just right in front of them. So I thought that because the video mostly talked about the teacher having hand signals, you know, like, you know, touch your mouth to be like, this is like, be quiet. But I thought giving that same agency to the students and like letting them have their own system of communicating nonverbally was also a really cool idea, like a really good takeaway that I have from my classroom.
Yeah, in our school, like we have our nonverbal cues because we like are all silent during the stairways and the transitions in the hallway. So we have like, you know, silence and like thumbs up for demerit, that's a demerit. But like for kids, like if they need to talk to us and they know that they have to be silent, like they do this and that's like, we need to talk to you urgently, or like they already have their system for sharpening their pencils or needing a pencil, or I need a tissue. So like they have their own system. And then sometimes they'll do like the silent in the hallway to other kids and they hold each other accountable. And they kind of feel cool, like having their own system to use.
Awesome.
This is kind of on a different topic altogether. So, but one of the questions that I asked Mr. Kent and all the other teachers when I was interviewing them was like, do you use your teacher voice in public? And like, can you run from your classroom management style? And they were like, no, we can't. And like, that was like the answer across the board. They were like, I will be like at a date with my boyfriend and like, I'll just be like, oh, and like start teaching this person that like our peers with. Or like Mr. Kent said that he was at church on Sunday and he was like, all right, we're gonna come back in 3, eyes on me in 2. And like his entire church meeting started laughing at him. Like, really? Like, I can't run from my teacher voice. So like, I kind of hope to gain those skills because I'm more of a sit back kind of person. So I hope to become more of a leader by learning more classroom management skills and by like using them more, because right now, like, I have one tutorial that is like pretty out of control. They just laugh at absolutely everything. Thankfully during the 9/11 packet, they were like kind of respectful, but like we did a packet on cheetahs yesterday and how like there's a type of cheetah that's dying out. And they couldn't stop laughing because they kept picturing these cheetahs getting hit by cars. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. And I was like, guys, you told me cheetahs were your favorite animal and they're dying. Like, why can't you be serious about this? So like, I couldn't get control of them in that moment because like, they were just like dying laughing. And I like, don't know what to do when 7th graders are just like having a fit of the giggles and like, they're all friends and like once one starts laughing, they all start laughing and it just like spirals out of control really fast.
So I've had to become very mature in the sense where like I have to not laugh at things that I think are hilarious in front of the kids. I have to like hold it in and take a second, because I've heard some kids say some insanely hilarious things and I'm like, you can't say that here.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, it's like always hard because they say like the like funniest things and you try not to laugh.
This girl in my class, this is like the perfect example, got very upset with my teacher because she felt that she was being talked about, and so she yelled across the room at me then, like on Twitter, at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot laugh right now, so I'm going to go take you outside and talk to you and tell you why that was not appropriate.
It is really funny.
It was so funny, and I was like, oh, this is like really hard to not laugh at this right now.
Yeah. So actually, me and Marlis kind of have to go because we're still in our building for our work, and they close at 7, and we kind of have to leave the building because they will kick us out. So we just wanted to say like we had to go because we didn't want to just like be like shut down the computer because they will kick us out. They have done that before.
They will kick you out, yes.
They will kick
You guys go ahead.
All right. Sorry. Thank you so much, though.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Do we have a time on this meeting?
Yeah, I have us at 33 minutes and 20.
Okay. I guess we should keep going then until we hit 45.
Yeah.
Because this one has to be 45 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the other one's 30. All
What
right.
else do you guys get out of the articles then? Did anyone read the culturally responsive one and have thoughts?
Yeah, we haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, this is the one we haven't discussed yet.
What do you guys make of that? Anyone have any?
I like definitions a lot. So I highlighted the GBs out of all of these definitions, or underlined the GBs
awesome.
all of these definitions. But I really liked the quote where it said, "Therefore, classroom management becomes an important tool in your arsenal of reducing and preventing disproportionality." And I was like, yeah, I feel like there are some students that like there's one kid and every single day he has to go to the bathroom at the exact same time. And every single day, like 4 other kids jump up when I like start taking kids to the bathroom before he does. And so like every day this kid gets overlooked because the teacher will just be like, no, don't take him yet. Like he's being good, let him be. And so every day this poor kid like gets overlooked. And I'm like, feel like I'm not managing the classroom space well because he's not getting the attention that he needs, especially with something as urgent as needing to go to the bathroom apparently that badly. So it made it seem like that quote just like made me think of that kid and how I'm like a little disproportionate with my classroom management because I like focus on the kids that need the attention, and this kid just like pays good attention. He sits in the front row, he like does his work, so he doesn't get the attention that he needs.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we're all so tempted to like hand out the glows, which is our version of merits, like to the kids who really need a lot of positive enforcement, who are like also the kids who act out a lot. And I've noticed that like they frequently end up with more glows than kids who are always doing what they're supposed to, just because you don't notice the good kids as much, which is unfortunate for them. But something that like really stood out to me from one of the classroom management videos was that like you use like circulating around the classroom not just to make sure that you're like catching all the bad behavior, but also to make sure that all the students have like equal access to you if they need help. And it like to spread the power around. Like power and hierarchy is something that Camille and I have been talking a lot in our social studies content group. Because like the kids who are like up at the front of the class have like more of the power because they're closer to the teacher. So like circulating spreads it around, which is also like ties into the idea of culturally sensitive teaching, like using education to like break down barriers. It just blew my mind.
I'm really big on like checking your privilege. So I liked when they talked about cultural biases and lens and how we need to keep that in mind when we walk in. Because like as an undergrad, I was a sociology major and was very into that area of sociology. And so coming into education, I was very excited to see so much training on how not to bring your biases into a classroom, because I think that's so important.
I also think it's important to like understand that you do have biases and just like check them first and just be like, so like I am a white girl from the suburbs. I need to understand that before I go into my classroom. Because I'm not like students were making fun of me because I like didn't understand certain words, and I was like, I've never heard that word before in my life, but I'm just gonna pretend that I know what it means. And they're like, what does it mean? What does it mean? And I was like, shut up, like just do your work. Stop pressuring me because I don't understand certain words that like are slang and are not even real words. Let's use academic words in the classroom. But like they're like, I don't know, it's important to check that like I do recognize that I am this spoiled white girl from the suburbs and that I need to like understand that before I walk into the classroom every day, because otherwise I will come in with a bunch of prejudices and biases that are biases. That, you know what I mean, where like I'm not treating the children the way that they should be treated.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's something that me and my roommates were actually just talking about that yesterday. They're also Great Oaks MIC tutors. And even just talking about kind of some of the rules that we have in place and whether or not those are actually necessary for a good learning environment, or if those are just kind of like norms that have existed like for generations and generations and don't necessarily like aren't necessarily like culturally appropriate, but they just are what you're supposed to be doing in school. And so I liked how this article was talking about how like, you know, there might be a student who, you know, gets in trouble for being disrespectful, but in that culture that's not a form of disrespect. Or like, so it's just like really interesting to kind of try to break down why we have certain rules, like why sitting smart or sitting up straight is a rule. Because I know I have some kids who just genuinely like it's learning just as well being able to read with their book on their lap than on their desk. And so trying to break those things down and why we've decided that those are the right way to do things, it's really intriguing.
I personally cannot learn like that. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen me grabbing my hair and like, because I cannot sit still, but it doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. And like Adriana brought up that certain like scholar positions and that form of like, this is how you need to learn, have been proven by research to not be conducive specifically to young Black males.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was interesting because in Bridgeport, that's the predominant population of our school. So why do we have a certain strategy that's known to not be conducive to their learning?
I feel like it's also like schools that do serve like lower income students of color often have more strict discipline and like more rules that seem just kind of arbitrary and are like for the benefit of the teacher and not the benefit of the students than schools that serve maybe like upper and middle class white kids do. And that's very interesting to me just because I feel like it's treating your students like criminals before they even walk in the door. And you're like, you need all this extra structure just because of the background that you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was weird, like, coming here and seeing, like, how many kids get morning detention and how many kids get Friday detention, because, like, detention was this thing that we had once a month at my school, and there'd be maybe 2 kids in it. Like, once a month, 2 kids. That was it. And it'd be, like, because they forgot to put their phone in their locker and it went off that day.
Mm-hmm.
It was never, like, disciplining kids was never something we did in school because, like, they just assumed that we were going to be like great kids, but like we did have issues that could have been addressed that like just because there weren't teachers standing in the hallways or in the lunchroom or wherever the problem areas were.
I grew up in a very urban, predominantly Black city, and it was very interesting because we didn't have rules like this in place at our school, but I also went to a public school in Washington State where we don't have charter schools. But I'm thinking back to the time, and one thing I do think that I actually liked a lot is we had STEP program. So like step 1, you were on a warning, step 2, and it would go up to step 5, and that was removable. But step 4 was in-class suspension. So you were moved to the front of the classroom next to the teacher's desk, but you were still in class. But they moved you away from the class. So that, and you were provided with the materials you needed, so you didn't have to see the board, but you also weren't facing the students so that you wouldn't be distracted, and you could still listen to the material. And I feel like there's not a ton. I've noticed a lot more removals than class separations at Great Oaks, Bridgeport. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like a lot of kids are not learning because of that, because then they go to ISS and the students and they'll have their work on ASU, but they don't hear the lecture. They're not provided with notes necessarily. And they also have the choice to opt out of that work.
Wait, I'm sorry, what was that last part?
They have the choice to like opt out of the work in the dean's office. So they'll sit there and they'll do a reflection instead of working on their homework.
Huh.
So then that becomes homework, where if they didn't hear it, then as a student, I wouldn't want to go home and do homework for something I didn't make a lecture for, and I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah, that seems not conducive to learning whatsoever. I've noticed a similar thing. Like, I've had a couple different times where I've had my teacher be like, can you take them outside? And like, or like, that's even happened to me in tutorial sometimes, and like, where I'll have another tutor or a dean come by and a student is misbehaving and they get taken out. And sometimes I think like having a conversation is very appropriate. Like sometimes something needs to be addressed where you talk to the student. But in cases where that's not necessarily the case, where like you don't need to have that conversation and you're just removing them for the sake of removing them as a punishment, like a lot of them, like I've had kids be like, yeah, I want to be removed, take me out of class, like I don't want to be here, I don't want to be doing this. Like that's not a punishment to them to have to like go stand outside in the hallway for 2 minutes where they can make faces at their friends in class. Like for them, it's like it'd be much more conducive to like have them stay in class, like you said, maybe up close by the teacher or something like that. That's interesting.
Yeah, my teacher specifically, I feel, does a lot of removals where I've had more time to circulate the classroom recently because I'm not doing much teacher. So I've been doing a lot of off stage. Like, okay, I've talked to you already, so we're gonna go step out in a hall and have a conversation. And that conversation usually recess the students. And like I will be engaged in a conversation, what does the student need? Maybe the student just can't sit down, so they need to go on a class. So we can sit in the halls, let them drink the water, and then go back. And they're so much better when they get back in because they've gotten that, like, instead of just removing them.
All right, so we have like a minute left. So does anyone have any closing thoughts on classroom management skills, styles, whatever? All right. Well, this has been productive.
Yeah, I feel really good talking to y'all. I think it's good to be able to like we said, kind of like have this community to like talk it out. I've definitely like heard some strategies that I might try to implement in my classes or tutorials, so that's always beneficial.
It's nice to know other people are looking at the same strategies the same way too.
Definitely, and to see like what's worked for people and what hasn't. So thanks for everyone's time.
Yeah.
All right. I will send you the recording link.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.